She took reggae global, won a Grammy at 19, and vanished when the world wanted more. What really happened to Koffee? From blessings to backlash, from chart-topping to silence. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. Stick around till the end to discover why her next move could either resurrect a genre or seal her legacy in silence. Koffee never wanted to be a star. In fact, Michaela Victoria Simpson had no idea that the chords she strummed alone in her Spanish town home would one day echo across continents. But the world had different plans. At just 17, a simple Instagram video transformed her from a high school talent show champion into the face of a new reggae generation. That video, a tribute to the legendary sprinter Usain Bolt, wasn't just a tribute. It was prophecy. Within hours, the track titled Legend had exploded online, reposted by Bolt himself, and then shared by reggae giants and producers alike. Everyone wanted to know who this tiny girl with a guitar and a revolutionary voice was. Jamaica had found its next icon. The music industry moved quickly. Labels came knocking, producers came begging, and legends opened doors she hadn't even dared to knock on. What stood out wasn't just Michaela Simpson's voice. It was her energy, her youth, her refusal to fit neatly into any box. And yet, she wore her influences like armor. The lyrical fire of Prodoge, the spiritual vibrations of Chronix, the ancestral rhythm of Peter Tosh. These weren't just sounds she admired. They were the roots she grew from. Her breakout moment came not in a studio but on stage, when Coco T, a living legend, introduced her at Rebel Salute in 2018. And as if the gods of reggae themselves were watching, Prodoge pulled her up on stage. Then Chronix. And suddenly, she wasn't just watching history, she was becoming it. But nothing changed the trajectory of her life like the release of Toast. That song, warm, rhythmic, and blessed with gratitude, wasn't just a hit. It was an anthem. Written in the aftermath of a visit to Haiti, still grappling with the wreckage of its 2010 earthquake, Toast sounded like sunshine after a storm. The world sang it. The world streamed it. And the world crowned Michaela Simpson, Koffee, as the next big thing. Her debut EP Rapture soared, not just onto playlists, but onto the Billboard reggae charts, where it planted its flag firmly at #1. Awards followed. A Grammy, no less. The first for a female solo reggae artist, and the youngest reggae winner in the awards history. She didn't just win, she rewrote the rules. But success is a dangerous drug, especially when it arrives too fast. And in Koffee's case, the applause became deafening. There were expectations. There was pressure. There were whispers that turned to roars about whether she could hold the line between commercial acclaim and cultural authenticity. Because while Toast was rooted in Jamaica, in spirituality, in truth, her next steps didn't always feel that way. The 2022 album Gifted was a different sound. Still polished, still poetic, but different. The bass lines were softer, the edges rounded. The lyrics that once praised blessings now boasted brands. Cartier, Balenciaga, Ferraris. Listeners paused. Some felt disconnected. Others felt betrayed. And maybe that's where the story begins to twist. Because when Koffee dropped Gifted, it wasn't received with the same thunder as Rapture. It didn't soar up the charts or spark revolutions. It peaked, respectably, at #2 on the Billboard Reggae Albums chart. But it lacked the staying power, the resonance. Rapture had remained on the charts for over 30 weeks. Gifted quietly bowed out after a fraction of that. Critics from pop-leaning outlets applauded its style. But the roots reggae community, the people who had danced barefoot to Rapture, stood still. The album felt like it had one foot in Jamaica and the other reaching toward Los Angeles. The authenticity that once set her apart seemed blurred, if not abandoned. And this wasn't just about sound. It was about spirit. Because while Michaela Simpson had once been embraced by reggae royalty, post-Gifted, she seemed adrift. Her collaborations veered far from Kingston streets. She jumped on tracks with John Legend. She stood next to British Gambian rapper Jay Haas. But no duets with dancehall heavyweights. No collabs with reggae sisters or brethren. It was as if her passport had stamped every global stage, except home. The same home that had launched her. Then came the controversy. In 2023, Koffee joined British pop star Sam Smith on the track, Gimme, a song dripping in suggestive lyrics and shimmering synths. To the casual ear, it was just another global feature. But to her core fans, especially those raised on the spiritual foundations of reggae, it was sacrilege. The girl who once sang about blessings and upliftment was now accused of indulging in vanity and vulgarity. The backlash was swift. On Twitter, on Instagram, in barbershops across Kingston. Some said she was evolving. Others said she had sold out. And then silence. No new music. No album. No single. No acoustic freestyles. Just the occasional post. The industry noticed. Whispers spread that her label, RCA, had grown cold. Numbers weren't where they needed to be. Confidence in her commercial power was dwindling. Rumors swirled until they hardened into headlines. RCA and Koffee had parted ways. Quietly, without statement, without farewell. For a talent like Michaela Simpson, the optics were troubling. 7 years had passed since her swift entry into the scene, and only 2 full-length albums had emerged. 2 albums in 7 years. For a generation raised on weekly drops and constant presence, that was a lifetime of absence. And while she continued to tour, gracing festivals in Europe, performing for diasporas hungry for home, her core fanbase felt abandoned. The ones who believed that she was the future of reggae now asked if that future had already expired. And yet, there's something about Michaela Simpson that makes it impossible to count her out. Because even in the quiet, her impact pulses. Young girls in Jamaica still learn her songs. Underground artists still cite her as proof that you can rise without compromising your soul. And the truth is, Koffee isn't gone. She's just paused. Sometimes, the silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, it's strategy. If anything, history tells us that comebacks don't need permission. Look at Buju Banton. After nearly a decade away, he returned to roaring crowds. Shabba Ranks was written off more than once. So was Lady Saw, until she re-emerged, not as a dancehall queen, but as Minister Marion Hall. In Jamaica, redemption is written into the rhythm. But redemption requires reconnection. If Michaela Simpson wants to rise again, not just as a pop feature or a festival guest, but as the beating heart of modern reggae, then she must return to source. Not to the market, but to the mission that first pushed her to pick up that guitar, to sing about love, justice, struggle, and praise. Not Prada and private jets. And that requires courage. It requires turning down glossy global features and instead walking barefoot into Top Gun studios, where the air still smells like Bob Marley's incense. It means collaborating not with pop juggernauts, but with roots warriors, Lila Ike, Jesse Royal, Savannah, and Mortimer. It means stepping into the same cipher as Protoge and Chronix, not for nostalgia, but for rebirth. Because her greatest weapon has never been her sound. It's been her soul. But even if she chooses to make that return, the world she's coming back to has changed. The streaming economy is ruthless. Attention is a currency that devalues by the second. A viral moment today is forgotten tomorrow. Algorithms reward sameness, not sincerity. And perhaps that's what pushed Michaela Simpson away in the first place. Perhaps the cost of remaining true became too heavy. Perhaps, in chasing evolution, she lost her anchor. Still, the window isn't closed. She's only 25, still younger than when most legends dropped their first album. Her voice, clear, commanding, and carved from fire, is intact. Her pen still writes with the weight of scripture. Her story is still being written. But comebacks don't happen because fans demand them. They happen because artists fight for them. So the question isn't whether Michaela Simpson has the talent to return. That's never been in doubt. The question is, does she still want it? Not the fame, not the streams, but the purpose, the calling, the reason Legend went viral, the reason Toast caught fire, the reason she mattered. And if she finds that reason again, if she sits with her truth in quiet rooms, far from labels and playlists, then the comeback won't just be possible. It will be inevitable. Because beneath the silence, there's still movement. Michaela Simpson is not someone the universe lets fade quietly. She wasn't manufactured. She was discovered. Her talent, raw and uncoached, broke through simply because it couldn't be ignored. That kind of magic doesn't disappear. It waits. It reconfigures. And when it returns, it doesn't whisper. It roars. But this next chapter, if it's to come, must be different. Not louder, not flashier, truer. Because while her early rise was fast, it wasn't hollow. Koffee arrived at a moment when reggae needed new blood. The genre was aging in the global arena. Its politics had become predictable. Its sound, while sacred, was struggling to evolve. And then she emerged, young, gifted, and unapologetically Jamaican, with locks that spoke before she did and lyrics that felt both ancestral and futuristic. She gave reggae something it hadn't had in a while: urgency. Suddenly, reggae wasn't just a throwback vibe for summertime playlists. It was current. It was sharp. It was on fire again. With Toast, with Rapture, she made reggae sound like the future without abandoning its roots. The rhythm was still there. The heart still beat in off-key patterns. But there was something else. Something revolutionary. And the world noticed. So when Gifted landed, it wasn't just a sophomore album. It was a test. Could she carry the flame forward, or would it dim under the weight of expectation? Could she grow without drifting? Change without leaving? The answer, unfortunately, didn't come in the music. It came in the reaction. And that reaction was a collective shrug. Not hatred, not disdain, just a quiet disappointment. The sound was too polished, too universal, too distant from the hills of Spanish Town. And when she tried to walk that fine line between crossover and cultural authenticity, the line snapped. Then came the brand deals, the fashion, the placements in movies and shows, appearances on international platforms where reggae wasn't even the headline. She was present, but not planted, visible, but not rooted. And to many, it felt like she had swapped her guitar for a mirror. And reggae? Reggae was left behind, waiting, like a mother who raised a star only to watch her child forget where home was. Yet what her critics forget is that Michaela Simpson was never just a reggae artist. She was always more than the genre. She was a storyteller, a messenger. And her gift wasn't her style, it was her clarity. That uncanny ability to say big things with small words. To bless a beat with meaning, not just melody. And maybe, just maybe, the industry didn't know what to do with that. Because when you're young, black, strong, and unfiltered, you're hard to package. Harder still to preserve. Labels want predictability. They want replication. They want you to be the same you that sold last year. But Michaela Simpson is a shapeshifter. And that scared them. That may be why RCA walked away. Not because she lacked talent, but because she refused to be tamed. Because she wouldn't sing what they wrote. Because she wouldn't dance to algorithms. Because she wanted to craft, not just create. And the industry doesn't have time for artists who still treat music like ministry. But the world outside the industry, the fans, the real listeners, they're still watching, still hoping, still believing that somewhere Michaela Simpson is writing. That she's returning, not just with a single or an album, but with a purpose. Because when she came, she didn't just make music. She shifted something. She reminded a generation that reggae wasn't dead. That it didn't have to sound like the past to be powerful. That it could still lead. And what's ironic is that even in her absence, no one has replaced her. No one has filled the space she left. No one has stepped in to become the new young voice of conscious Caribbean music. Which means the seat is still warm. The crown's still unclaimed. But the comeback won't be easy. This isn't 2018. The world has changed. The algorithms are colder. The audience is more distracted. The attention span's shorter than ever. To break through now requires more than just a good song. It requires a moment, a movement. And that's what Michaela Simpson must create. She must ignite another fire. But this time, not from the cheers of others, but from within herself. That fire must burn through the doubts, through the criticism, through the fear that maybe the moment has passed. Because it hasn't. The world still wants her. They just want her whole. Not the filtered version. Not the polished performer. The girl from Spanish Town. The girl with the guitar. The girl who stood on stage next to Prodoge and looked like she was born there. If that girl returns, if that woman returns, the game changes again. And maybe this time, she doesn't need a label. Maybe she drops her next album independently, owned in full. Maybe she tours not as a guest, but as a movement. Maybe she speaks directly to her people, to her culture, to her God, and lets the rest of the world catch up. Because chasing the world didn't work, but making the world come to her. That's what Toast did. That's what Rapture did. That's what Koffee can still do. But she must decide soon. Because in music, silence has a shelf life. If too much time passes, the world forgets. The buzz dies. The spotlight shifts. But if she speaks now, if she sings now, if she rises now, there's still space. There's still hunger. And if her next project speaks to that hunger, if it sounds like home and healing and hope, then the same fans who criticized her will embrace her louder than ever. Not because she never fell, but because she got back up. And when she does, the comeback won't be a return. It'll be a rebirth. A statement that greatness, real greatness, doesn't vanish. It evolves. It pauses. It stumbles. But it endures. And in the case of Michaela Simpson, it transforms. Do you think Koffee lost her way? Or is she simply writing the next chapter in silence? Should she return to her reggae roots, or keep evolving into something new? Tell us what you think in the comments. Your voice matters here. And if you believe in music that moves, artists that grow, and stories that don't end when the charts stop, subscribe now. Because when Koffee returns, you'll want to be the first to hear the roar.